Hey guys, PieGuy Rules here, and welcome to a Spongey Bits list, where I take some episodes from my big SpongeBob review series, put them together based on some sort of theme, and elaborate further on my reviews. This video's theme is the seasons 1, 2, and 3
ScumBob episodes.
Starting with, I was a teenage Gary. Squidward is neglectful of Gary while pet sitting. Fun fact, the title of this episode is a reference to the movie I Was a Teenage Werewolf. Haven't seen that one. Anyway, my favorite part is Squidward trying to get Gary with the needle, but really stabbing SpongeBob. But, did this episode stab me through the heart like the first ScumBob episode on the list? Yes. Yes, it did. That's right, guys, this is a dreaded
ScumBob episode.
I didn't want to believe that there could be one in Season 1, but honestly, this is not a very good episode. Everything from the fact that the plot is all over the place, from Squidward babysitting for Gary while SpongeBob and Patrick were away, to SpongeBob as a snail annoying Squidward, to that ending where they're singing. The plot is all over the place. There isn't that many funny gags. It has a really awkward ending, and I don't even get what SpongeBob wants from Squidward. Is he trying to haunt him? Is he just trying to annoy him? Say hi? I don't get the character's motivation. And really, does it make any sense that the snail medication would actually turn someone into a snail? It's just not funny. It's a weak episode, and it's kind of awkward. I get that they wanted to do something to go along with the Halloween episode, but this is just not good. So this is the first episode I gave the dreaded ScumBob rating to. And while I stand by my decision, I will have to say, it is on the more tame side of ScumBob. There are a lot of things wrong here, but there were still a few genuinely good and funny moments. I like when Squidward eats all the snail food and it's all up in his head. I like some of the jokes with SpongeBob transforming into a snail. There's also the scene that I picked to be my favorite of the episode. And you might be wondering why I like that scene if I really hate sharp objects, and it's because, one, I really like the sequence more than I like the scene. The whole Gary being pulled away at the last second has good timing. And two, it's because, well, it's a shell. It's not an actual needle, so I can distance myself. It's more comedic than it is realistic. There are a few things here that work, but overall I just get a very uncomfortable vibe from this episode. It feels like it's way too long in a really bad way because it doesn't feel like much actually happens. And I feel like some of the timing on the jokes were off, like too slow. The animation just couldn't keep up with where the story wanted to be for a lot of gags, and so some of them kind of seem predictable, and it makes the gags less enjoyable if you can tell what the gag is 5 seconds before it happens. Maybe it's just a pet peeve of mine and it doesn't bother anyone else, but when stories end on an open-ended note like this, it just feels incomplete. It's like the writers didn't feel like writing an ending. Now, sometimes this can work. Drake and Josh was a show that did this kind of thing all the time, and it worked in a lot of episodes, not always, but I don't really think it works here. As a kid, and kind of still now, it's just really unsettling that SpongeBob and Squidward are stuck as snails. There's not any sort of solution or any sort of indication that this is gonna wear off. Now, it's SpongeBob, so of course it wears off before the next episode, but still, it's just kind of a weird note to leave off on. Well, I think I've said everything I needed to say. On to the next episode. Party Pooper Pants. SpongeBob throws a house party. Fun fact, SpongeBob's mat was only seen in the one scene where he gets the key. Yeah, that whole joke about, oh, he had a key under the mat the entire time is totally thrown off by the fact that the mat wasn't there. Listen, guys, if you want to be inconsistent between episodes to tell great stories, fine. But you can't be inconsistent within the one episode, and even if it is for just a gag, it makes the gag look cheap, it makes you look lazy, and it just makes the entire thing look really inconsistent. Anyway, my favorite part was the window flip gag, where Mrs. Puff turns what she thinks is a picture of SpongeBob, and it's actually a window. SpongeBob says, I don't even know how that happened. And it's funny because there's a lot of weird, improbable physics things to happen in SpongeBob, and for him to actually acknowledge it for once makes it pretty dang funny. Looks like Patrick wasn't the only one hanging lampshades in this episode. Over on the Patchy side of things, we have episode 51P, SpongeBob's House Party. Patchy throws a house party. Fun fact, Lux Interior sings Underwater Sun, which is also my favorite part. So, is this a SpongeBob party or a ScumBob party? I'm sorry guys, it's a
ScumBob episode.
There is a lot wrong here, starting with the initial premise. The idea of SpongeBob throwing a house party isn't necessarily a bad one, but it's not enough material to be a 22-minute special. There's a lot of gags in this episode, specifically pertaining to SpongeBob setting up the party, that feel like they could have been funny had they not been overused and stretched out. and I feel like the length of this episode is definitely to blame for that. Then there's the fact that the entire concept seems very gimmicky, right down to the fact that Nickelodeon aired a marathon of SpongeBob episodes beforehand and had live segments between commercials where a bunch of special celebrity guests came and held a SpongeBob party. The patchy segments are alright, but they're nothing fantastic, definitely not enough to bring up this episode. Underwater Sun is indeed a great song, but everything else in the patchy segments just seemed like stuff that we've retread before. Patchy and Potty fighting, Patchy getting blown up, yada yada yada, we've seen it before, there's nothing great here. As if all that wasn't enough, there is one more huge problem with this episode. SpongeBob is really unlikable here. He acts like a jerk the entire time, trying to get everyone to conform to the way he wants to throw the party. It is so far against his nature to be doing what he does in this episode. His mean-spiritedness is not warranted at all. It's not like Can You Spare a Dime, where Squidward totally pushed SpongeBob too far. All that SpongeBob does in this episode is whine about how people don't want to do his horrible party. So much so that by the point he gets arrested for completely stupid reasons, you're cheering it on because it's finally good to see him get some kind of comeuppance. He is a complete jerk here, and it makes this episode really intolerable to watch. I didn't even mention it in the review, but this episode starts off pretty bad, both in the Patchy segments and in the SpongeBob segments. The Patchy segments start off with a miniature clip show of what's about to come, which is a sure sign that they were pushing for time in this episode and trying to fill it out, and the SpongeBob segment begins with a kind of mean-spirited look into the life of a cashier and how depressed he is. Nothing about SpongeBob at that store was funny at all, it was just kind of sad. The two biggest problems with this episode are just that its pacing is terrible, and SpongeBob is so unlikable here. And what's ironic is that every other character in this comes off as way better than they're usually portrayed. Patrick is really funny here. He's still dumb, but he plays the kind of charismatic party dude. Mr. Krabs actually doesn't mention money at all in this episode. Totally forgot that there were episodes where he didn't mention money at all. Heck, there's even some good satire on parties in general and things like small talk and awkward situations and that kind of thing. But man, if SpongeBob isn't just so unlikable here, again, it's certainly a more mild ScumBob episode, but still, I do not like watching this episode. It is a chore to sit through. The Great Snail Race. SpongeBob trains Gary for a snail race. My favorite part is Sandy's cameo. Sandy appears in this episode after SpongeBob makes a sexist comment. She appears just walking down the street saying, "I think I'm gonna kick SpongeBob's butt tomorrow." And then at the very end of the episode, she comes in and kicks SpongeBob's butt. When I was a kid, I didn't quite understand what was going on here. I thought it was just a completely random joke about Sandy kicking SpongeBob's butt. However, it's actually in reference to the fact that SpongeBob called Gary a lady to demotivate him, and Sandy's just getting payback for his sexist comment. It's actually quite funny because, yeah, SpongeBob made a sexist comment and Sandy called him out for it. Good going, Sandy. So, is this episode spongy or scummier than the underside of a snail? I hate to say it, but it's a
ScumBob episode.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna get some flack for this, but honestly guys, I cannot find many redeeming qualities in this episode. This episode's actually kind of uncomfortable to watch. The first half is SpongeBob mean-spiritedly pushing Gary way too far, and then the second half is Gary disgustingly crashing as if he were some weird snail race car hybrid. It's really disgusting to watch, and I've seen the Splinter. Also, it really bugs me that Snelly is only in this one episode. I know SpongeBob has bad continuity and I should be used to this, but come on, Squidward adopts a pet. It really comes off like he just bought Snelly for this one race and then shipped her right on back after she fell in love with Gary. The episode's not completely devoid of humor, of course. The Squidward tortellini running gag is kind of funny, and there's a funny gag about Patrick standing on Squidward's shoulders. You have to see it to understand it. But it really is a ScumBob episode. I can't find many more redeeming things beyond that. It's just an incredibly mean-spirited and uncomfortable episode to watch. So yeah, this is my least favorite episode in all of the original run of SpongeBob, seasons 1 through 3. This is the episode that I dislike the most, and personally believe is the worst episode of the bunch. However, I know there are people out there that like this episode, so I'll start by mentioning something good. The guy who delivers Squidward's pet actually is humming the song that SpongeBob is playing at the beginning of the episode, which is just like a nice little thing that I never noticed until just now rewatching this. I think a better fun fact for this episode is that we get to see Bikini Bottom's mayor. I didn't even know Bikini Bottom had a mayor. I didn't even know if there was any sort of government in this underwater system. I mean, we see cops, but that's usually it. And wait, actually, anytime we do ever see any sort of rulership, it's a king. Rule of Dumb, Patrick becomes king. There's King Neptune. But now I'm just stalling. But yes, the three things that I really don't like about this episode are 1, the fact that it's cliche and predictable. There's all sorts of training montage cliches, and it's obvious that SpongeBob is pushing Gary too far, and it's obvious that Gary is going to forgive SpongeBob at the end of the episode, and it's obvious that Patrick's rock is going to win the race. It's obvious that the joke with the snail is that he's going to be really slow getting there, and the pacing on that gag was pretty bad as well. Problem number 2. SpongeBob is an unlikable jerk. There are ways to have done this where he wasn't a jerk, but maybe just a little bit overbearing, but no, he is just such a jerk here. It's very obvious that Gary doesn't want any part of this, but SpongeBob is clearly forcing him. And problem number 3, perhaps my biggest pet peeve about this episode, the really grotesque way that Gary crashes. I know it's over the top and played for humor, and I wasn't actually concerned that Gary was going to die or anything like that, but it just feels so gruesome. It doesn't feel funny, it just feels harsh. Very, very harsh. And Squidward laughing at Gary being severely injured at the end is just needlessly cruel. It's weird that 2 out of 3 ScumBob episodes involve someone mistreating Gary. And if what I hear is true from you guys, there's an episode much later down the line called Pet Sitter Pat, which is infamous for its treatment of Gary. And that time it's Patrick's doing. I think what makes it worse when it's Gary is 2 things. 1, he's a pet, and animal abuse unfortunately happens in the real world, so seeing it even portrayed cartoonishly is a little bit uncomfortable. And 2, he can't talk. He can't really defend himself. He's an animal, and yes, he seems super smart in a few episodes, but in a lot of them, he's just kind of a pet. He has no way to stand up for himself and tell SpongeBob, no, I don't want to do this. He's trying to make it clear, but SpongeBob will not listen. So it comes off as SpongeBob mistreating someone who can't even defend himself or tell him to stop. There are some funny moments in this episode, but after watching it, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And that's every ScumBob episode from seasons 1 through 3 reviewed. Oh, sorry, that was a force of habit. But seriously, I hope I defended my choices a little bit better here. If you disagree, that is totally cool. There's no problem with it. The only thing that gets me a little bit upset is when people don't think I'm rating these episodes fairly, or that I'm not trying hard enough to review them or looking at it from every angle, because trust me, I am. At the end of the day, you gotta remember, this is all still opinion-based. I mean, I could go online, find what the popular opinion is for every episode, and just regurgitate that, but where's the fun in that? Well, I hope you enjoyed this little remixing of content thing. Let me know if there's any other reviews you'd like me to elaborate on, and leave a comment telling me what your least favorite episode from seasons 1 through 3 is. PieGuy rules, out.